Wage negotiations are currently underway in the steel industry, which may rather bring about a new agreement, which, if concluded, will prescribe increased wages and other conditions of employment for the metal and engineering industry. In the period of 2011 to 2014 and 2014 to 2017, there were 2 agreements which were declared null and void by the Labour Court. This after the court challenged by the National Employers Association of South Africa, NEASA. The National Employers Association of South Africa represents 2,500 small businesses in the steel industry. NEASA's Chief Executive, Gerhard Papenfus, says government should appoint a judicial commission of inquiry to determine the state of the steel industry. Gerhard Papenfus joins us in the studio now. Thank you very much for coming, and let's start with your viewpoint regarding the state of the negotiations currently right now. We understand that things are not looking good.
Look, the previous agreement should have expired, or would have expired on the 30th of June. In normal circumstances, but since we've approached the court, quite a long time ago, this agreement was declared null and void, so there is no agreement applicable at this stage. Well, you know what is happening is the typical dynamics in the industry, which has made the industry the most expensive industry in South Africa. Just as a bit of background, this industry is exactly double the price than any other industry governed by collective bargaining. And this is because employers in the past simply negotiated poorly for business.
Well, what do you mean poorly? Clarify me on that.
Okay. The Labour Relations Act is almost a conspiracy against small business in the collective bargaining environment. What the Labour Relations Act says, when parties reach an agreement and they approach the minister for the extension of those agreements, in terms of representativity, she doesn't look at the number of the employers when she looks at employees. She looks at the number of employees employed by employers. Now, what has happened in the past, and that's why for 6 years all these agreements were set aside, a small minority of employers approached the minister and then through all kinds of illegal arrangements convinced the minister that these agreements had to be extended. But what they relied on, and correctly relied on, but they did a few wrong things with the figures, is that they misled the minister with regard to the figures, but they utilized illegal tactics in convincing the minister. The Labour Court in respect of the 2011-2014 agreement called this thing a sham.
How has an industry been able to sustain itself and continue working in this, industry that is very acrimonious at the moment?
Well, actually, it can't. The MEIBC is bankrupt. There's recently an administrator has been appointed. We've challenged all agreements in this council. We've even challenged the administrative agreement, which pays, bring in levies to sustain a council. We've said we simply no longer be prepared to contribute to this body, which is utilizing our money against us, enforcing illegal agreements on us. And this is actually now we're sitting with a situation where we're seeing a repeat. A particular organization, SABC, represents not more than 14% of employees in the industry, more than 14%. And I can see how they are capitulating, and for them extension is important. Now, I think this is so immoral to make an arrangement in weakness with a trade union and then extend that agreement to the rest of an industry which cannot afford it. Now, keep in mind, the cost of labor for a big business might be as low as 7% of turnover. For a small company, it might be as high as 50-60%. So if somebody agrees to a 10% increase, he said, well, it makes no difference. For a small guy, it is devastating, and that's why you're having this continuous losing of jobs in this industry.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
That's the environment where we find ourselves in.
That's what I want to ask you now. Now that the industry is in troubled waters, what are you going to do? Because I mean, like, the job losses are not only in the steel industry. Even just last week, we reported that the Anglo Gold Ashanti was retrenching 8,500 workers.
So, you know, we've in the past did all we can in terms of even, you know, we participate in negotiations. We try to convince. But there are hidden interests which simply withdraw from the negotiations, do backroom deals. Those same guys are currently still in the room, do backroom deals, go to the minister and extend it. And in the past, we went to the minister and said to her on each occasion, Minister, you cannot do it. And we petitioned her to explain to her on which grounds she couldn't. She still did. We eventually overturned it, but not after the damage was done. Now, the increases in the last 6 years amounts to between 50 and 60% illegally. So the industry is now already so expensive, and employers are currently caught up in this high wage model, which they simply cannot pay. Now, one must just understand this. We're not saying a salary of 10,000 Rand, for instance, is enough. That's not the point. It is the ability for people to pay. Now, if there are job losses, it is because there may be many reasons. I mean, there's the global issues. In the steel industry, there are steel issues. But wages is a tremendous issue in the steel industry. And we go in and we say, let's make certain arrangements.
Okay, now going forward, looking at the percentage demand of the union, which right now they're still in negotiations. I was not able to speak to them before I spoke to you. What are they demanding?
15. The most prominent union, NEASA, still demand 15%.
All right, and then what are you offering?
There are differences on the offer, on what basis it is calculated, but the offer on the table is CPI.
All right, I want a specific percentage.
5.3%.
5.3%.
At the moment, yeah.
All right, then we will get the side of story of SABC when we get the time. But thank you very much for updating on us. The negotiations are still continuing, so it doesn't end here.
It's happened today. It's happened. No, everybody is still in the room.
Yeah, I do understand it. But thank you so much for making time to speak to us.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
I'm speaking here live to Mr. Gerhard Papenfus, who is the Chief Executive of NEASA.